Hey, welcome back to the channel. Today we are looking at the HP Spectre X360. This is a really lightweight, ultra portable 2-in-1 laptop with some great specs, but it does have some flaws. Now, as usual, everything that I talk about in this video is going to be linked down in the description below, and if you have any questions or comments as I go through this, leave those in the comment section as well. I try to answer all those comments. So let's get right into the review. Now, this laptop comes in a few different configurations in both 15-inch and 13-inch. The one we're looking at today is the 13-inch. It's got an i7-8565U processor, 16 gigs of DDR4 RAM, a 512 gigabyte SSD drive, and that Intel UHD 620 integrated video card. Now, that integrated video card is not very powerful, but this laptop does have a trick up its sleeve that'll let you extend that out, and I'll get a little bit more into that as we talk about the hardware. Now, in talking about the hardware, the first thing you're gonna notice is that beautiful bright screen. Like I said, it's touch enabled and it does come with an active stylus. Now, it doesn't attach to the computer magnetically like a Surface Pro or Surface Book or anything like that, but it does come with a carry case that has a spot that you can stick your pen, so when you slide your laptop in there and put your pen in the holder, it keeps everything together, so that's a nice feature. That screen is really responsive. I've never had an issue with touching with just my fingers or that pen. The keyboard on the machine is actually very nice to type on. It's got a pretty shallow travel, as you can imagine, on a laptop this thin and light, but it's actually pretty decent to type on, and it takes you just a very short time to get used to. The trackpad has the potential to be really good. It's all glass, but it's not using the Windows Precision drivers, so at times the trackpad performance can be a little bit sluggish and it's not as smooth as some other laptops. Now, one thing that sets this machine apart is the design and those two cutout corners. On the left side is the power button, and it's situated in such a place where you're not going to hit it accidentally. On the right side, we have the first of our two USB-C ports. Coming along the right side, we have a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack, and then the second of our two USB-C ports. Now, these are not just USB-C, but they're also Thunderbolt 3, which means you can hook this up to any Thunderbolt 3 device, including an external GPU. Also on the right-hand side is a hardware switch that disables or enables the camera. And then the last is a micro SD card slot. And then on the left-hand side, we have that power button on the corner that I already mentioned, and a full-size USB 3 port. So because this is a 2-in-1 machine, you can use it in the laptop mode, you can use it in tent, you can fold it around to kind of display media, or fold it all the way back and use it like a tablet. Now, this machine is about 2.9 pounds, so you're probably not going to want to use it as a tablet all the time, but if it's sitting on your lap or sitting on a table and you're taking notes, works really well. As you would expect in day-to-day performance with that i7-8565U, 16 gigs of RAM, this thing performs really well. I have noticed if you're doing really intensive, either CPU or graphically intensive stuff, it does tend to throttle and bring that performance down a little bit. But for day-to-day use, that's not so much of an issue, and it's going to perform beautifully for that. Next thing I wanted to talk about is media creation, and the first thing I wanted to talk about in this category is drawing. Now, with that active stylus, you may be tempted to get this as a drawing tablet, and if you're just sketching and stuff like that, it works great. Pressure sensitivity works well. It's very responsive. Where things get a little sketchy is when you're trying to do some inking, and if you're moving really slow, you'll get a lot of jagged lines. If you're looking for it from a drawing perspective as your primary goal, there's probably better options out there than this laptop. Next up is video editing, and the first editor I tried is my editor of choice, and that's DaVinci Resolve. And this is where I saw my first issue with this machine. So I launched DaVinci Resolve and it complained that it could not find an OpenCL compatible display card. And I know this is a driver issue because I've used DaVinci Resolve on other machines like the Surface Pro 6 that has that Intel UHD 620, and it works just fine on there. So I'm not sure what the deal is on this machine, but I could not find a driver that worked to get DaVinci Resolve to load. Now, the next thing I tried obviously is Adobe Premiere. In both 1080p and 4K, Adobe Premiere worked beautifully. I was able to scrub through my timeline, playback at full speed. I did have to set the preview down to about a quarter of the resolution, but you know, that's okay. When you go to color correct and stuff, you can bump that back up to full. So if you use Adobe Premiere, this machine works great. If you're a DaVinci Resolve user, then this is not the machine for you. Now, other types of media creation work great. GIMP, Adobe Photoshop, Lightroom, all that stuff, even 3D applications. Now, if you want to bump up some of these applications to the next level, you can hook up this laptop to a external GPU and utilize the potential of that external GPU through that Thunderbolt 3 connection. So next I got to talk about gaming, and obviously this machine is not at all designed for gaming, but I could actually play more than I thought I could. Even more recent titles, as long as you set the resolution down and set some of the effects way down, you can get some acceptable frame rates. Older titles or less graphically intensive games like CSGO or something like that are going to run just fine. Again, using that Thunderbolt 3 connection, hooking it up to an external GPU, you can have a much better experience and get much faster frame rates with those games, but you'll only be able to do that at your desk when you're hooked up to that external GPU. One thing I really like about this machine is the battery life, and I get 8 to 10 hours depending on what I'm doing, but for everyday usage, note-taking, things like that, 8 to 10 hours is a pretty solid expectation. So all in all, I would say the HP Spectre X360 is a really good laptop, but not necessarily a great one. Some of the things I really like about it are the size, the form factor, the design and the portability of it, the fact that you can switch the screen around in that 2-in-1 fashion. The screen itself is beautiful and very responsive to both touch and pen, and overall the machine is relatively powerful. So depending on your use case, this might be a really good machine for you, but for me, for what I wanted for, it's not quite checking all the boxes. Now, hopefully you found this useful and informative. If you did, hit that thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so. Again, leave comments down below if you have any questions or comments on anything I went over, and I will see you in the next video.